Hello and welcome to our July live stream. This time we're competing with a certain event that's going on in San Diego. So I don't know if we'll get quite the numbers we normally do, but hopefully there's a bunch of people that'll catch up on the recording as well. So hi everyone, hi Rosie, hi Sarah, hi Philip, who are in the live chat. Great to see you all. This may end up being a fairly short one. I'm not sure yet. In the past, when I've thought that it was going to be a short update, it's ended up being long. But we'll see how we go. There's still some interesting things to talk about, so I hope you'll stick with us for the entire duration of the live stream. And if you're watching the recording, great to have you there as well. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is a few things. I want to talk a little bit about Cite Tolkien and Search Tolkien and a couple of small little improvements that we've made there. I want to talk about some progress that's being made on the tooling around alignment, give a quick update on some YouTube stuff, a quick book acquisitions update, and then some remodeling that's been going on with Rimbë, our annotation tool. I do want to point out, if you watched the video about Cite Tolkien and Search Tolkien and how to use them, in that video I used a brand new camera. And I would be using that camera for this live stream at the moment, except that the battery life on the camera, it's a Canon R8, which is an absolutely fantastic camera, but notorious for its poor battery life. And the battery won't last long enough for a live stream like this. I do have a dummy battery that allows you to connect the camera to constant power, but it stopped working last week. So unfortunately, I'm not using the new camera. Hey Hannah, by the way, great to have you. So you're back to just the built-in webcam on my monitor, unfortunately. But I will get the camera working eventually, or the dummy battery. That's the problem. The camera's working great. It's wonderful. So I will, hopefully in the next live stream, look a little better. Okay, let's though come back to the scheduled program. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the Cite Tolkien and Search Tolkien improvements. So we launched Cite Tolkien last month. It just had The Hobbit when I launched it. So one of the big news items, I guess, for Cite Tolkien is that now it includes the Silmarillion and the main text of Lord of the Rings. It doesn't yet include the appendices or the prologue or the footnotes, but the Silmarillion and the main text of Lord of the Rings is there in addition to The Hobbit. In fact, I can show you that. So now we have the Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion as well as The Hobbit. Now over in Search Tolkien, I made a couple of tweaks there as well. One of which is that we now have, if I go search for something, we now have a flat list of results if you don't want the hierarchical view. And also, and significantly, each of these hits, if the relevant part of the text is available on Cite Tolkien, then you can click on it and get to it. I did a whole dedicated video on Cite Tolkien and Search Tolkien. I'll include a link in the description, so I won't say anything more about that. But I did want to include a little update on this stuff because it's a big part of what we do, although not the only thing we do. A lot of people think that Search Tolkien is the core of the Digital Tolkien Project. Of course, any of you who watch these videos know that's not true at all. There's a lot of stuff going on, particularly around the annotations in Rimbë, which I'll say a little bit about towards the end. But let's jump back to the program, because one of the main things that I want to talk about next is the alignment tooling. So this is something I've shown before, the various tools that I've been building as I've been aligning different texts. And what I mean by aligning different texts, in the context of the Digital Tolkien Project, that mostly has to do with aligning different versions of the text. So in other words, matching up earlier drafts of The Hobbit with the published Hobbit, or the sketch of the mythology with the Quentin Older Rimbë, or different versions of the Lay of the Children of Húrin, or something like that. There are broader areas where alignment is useful. One of the things I do in my day job is alignments around translations. So, for example, aligning a Greek text, an ancient Greek text, with its translation, or something like that. But in the context of the Digital Tolkien Project, the focus is mostly different versions of the same text. And I've shown that before, various demos, stuff that I did while teaching history of Middle-earth, for example, aligning different versions of the Ainulindale. But more recently, I've been focused on aligning the drafts of The Hobbit with the final published version of The Hobbit, because, of course, I'm teaching a class at the moment on the history of The Hobbit, using John Ratliff's wonderful book here. Hey, Tom. Great to have you join us. So I wanted to, I showed, I think last time, I showed how I had a display that let you see what had been removed or added between different drafts of The Hobbit. But it was actually really, really cumbersome to make that kind of alignment. And so one of the things that I've been working on in the last month, alongside teaching the history of The Hobbit, is improving the tooling for doing that alignment. So I want to say a little bit about that. Let me just go to the left screen. So one of the first things I do when I'm trying to align text is match up the individual chunks. We've got this issue in particularly the drafts of The Hobbit to the final version, where Tolkien changed his mind about how to split things into paragraphs. You can see here, this is a display that I generated that's got the second phase manuscript of The Hobbit on the left-hand side. It's got the textual notes in the middle, and on the right-hand side is the latest version of The Hobbit, sort of the principal version that we work with at the Digital Tolkien Project. And you can see from these little paragraph, these pilcrows that indicate paragraph divisions, that this is all one paragraph on the left-hand side. It's a little small, but hopefully you get the idea. But it's actually two paragraphs in the final version. And so the very first thing that I do in order to align text is at least get them matching at a chunk level. And I've talked a little bit about some of the techniques for that before. I do this sort of rough lining up based on shared trigrams. So trigrams are sequences of 3 words. If 2 texts have the same, or have a lot of shared groups of contiguous 3 words, then there's a good chance that they're the corresponding chunks. And so this is just a screenshot of a display I often do. This is before I've done the chunk level alignment, the paragraph level alignment. The columns here are correspond to paragraphs in the published Hobbit. The rows correspond to the chunks in the draft. And then what each number in the cell says is how many shared trigrams are there. So the higher the number, the more similar the chunks of paragraphs are. And if they were perfectly lined up, then the big numbers that I display with a dark background would all be in this diagonal with the red. The fact that they don't match up means that there are paragraph misalignments. There are extra paragraphs in one or the other. And so you can see, for example, just looking at this 30, 55, and 10, this is one chunk in the draft, but seemingly corresponds to 3 chunks, 3 paragraphs in the final published version. So the first step that I do is just rearrange the chunking so that things line up perfectly. And then once I do that, I've got paragraph to paragraph comparisons that I can do. And that's what I've shown you before, the sort of results of, where I show deletions in red and additions in green and so on. But that was all done very manually. I had to go through side by side, look at 2 paragraphs and say, okay, that word matches with that word and so on. And it was quite cumbersome. So what I've recently built is this tool that helps me to do that alignment in a much more efficient way, because it was a waste of time. Hey Trotter, I'm glad that you're doing letter transcriptions while you're watching. That's fantastic. So here's the Hobbit second phase manuscript draft of the paragraph that, or the chunk that corresponds to paragraph 11004 in the published Hobbit, the Digital Tolkien Project edition. And so what it's done, which saves me a ton of time, is it goes and finds the first place where there's a discrepancy. So I don't have to follow through the whole word for word trying to find the first place that it has a discrepancy. That's exciting, Sarah. That's fantastic. Yeah, wonderful news. Broadcast live on YouTube. Fantastic. Okay, so you can see you don't need to send me anything, Tom. I can send you stuff that I've done on the alignment, or we can work together on that. But anyway, you can see this red marker shows this little red marker here. Oops, shows you the first point at which there's a difference between the two texts. So I can ignore anything in the kind of the grey, because that already matches up. The other thing that I've done is it goes and does that trigram alignment. So I can very easily find out where the different trigrams are. If I hover over and the pride, I can sort of see where the corresponding bit in both texts is, which is really handy. So you can see that what's going on here is that in the latest version of The Hobbit, or the sound of harps has been added. So what I can just do is I can select those words and basically add an annotation that's an addition. So now I've explained what's going on. I've said, okay, or sound of harps has been added. And then it takes me to the next part. And you can clearly see that on the draft, it has all their hearts, and in the published version, the latest version, it's just their hearts. So in other words, all got deleted. So I can just add that to our annotations. And especially Thorin's is a deletion. The is a deletion. So I can just click through very easily and look. What I used to have to do is word for word do this manually. Now I've got this guide that really helps me to identify what the changes are and incrementally go through. Here there's a that's been introduced. The land about them grew bleak. So about them is added. It said barren. Now it says bleak and barren, so that's been added. Thorin said corresponds to, so this is not a deletion or an addition, this is a change. So said has been changed to told them. You'll notice the other thing is I don't have to tell the system that it's a deletion or addition or a change. It works that out by virtue of the fact that it knows if I only select the left-hand side, then it's a deletion. If I only select the right-hand side, it's an addition. And if I select both, then it's a change. So all of that gets worked out. You get the idea. I mean, there's a little bit. I may as well finish this. Soon corresponds to and before long. And were corresponds to was. And blacken stumps gets added. And there, done. And the incomplete in red at the top has been replaced by green complete. So we've successfully aligned these two paragraphs. Why might we want to do this, you may say? You may ask, I mean. One of the main things I'm interested in here is studying patterns in the kinds of changes that got made. One of the things that becomes obvious as you do more and more of this is the sort of systematic changes that Tolkien made. And I've talked in class about sort of a taxonomy of of different changes, and it's really interesting just from a creative writing point of view. What are the sorts of improvements that Tolkien makes to the writing? Sometimes they're plot changes and so on, but a lot of the times they're just stylistic changes, and it's really interesting to see what they are and think about why he's done it. And being able to do this just gives us a way of interacting with the text in new ways, and seeing, I think, in a much clearer way what changed from version to version, rather than what you have to do if you're reading Ratliff's book is you kind of have to have it open in multiple places to see it. And that Tom, you and I have talked about this in the context of History Middle-earth, how if you're wanting to compare different versions of anything in Tolkien with the History Middle-earth, you end up like needing 3 or 4 different copies of History Middle-earth so you can have them open in different places. That's exactly the sort of thing that I'm hoping to improve and just enable richer ways of looking at different versions of the text. So that's the alignment tool that I did want to show. And that having multiple copies of History Middle-earth is relevant to what I'll talk about in a moment regarding book acquisitions. But I did want to give a brief update on YouTube. So a couple of great, exciting updates regarding this YouTube channel. One of which is that we sorted out the issue of the verification of identity. Google decided that I hadn't adequately proved who I was, and so they they basically paused my membership in the YouTube Partnership Program. One of the unfortunate things about that is that it meant that memberships were paused. So I recently turned on memberships of this channel. It's a way that you can, sort of like a Patreon sort of thing, you can subscribe to pay a little bit of money to support the channel and the project as a whole. And unfortunately, when Google decided I hadn't verified my identity adequately, that they would pause that. I only had 2 members at the time. Now that it's all working again, one of those members has come back. I don't know who the other member was, but they have not yet come back. Anyway, the more exciting, if you are interested in supporting this channel, then I think there should be a join button underneath each video. You can click on that and see what the 3 different tiers are of membership, if you are interested in supporting the channel and the project in that way. But the really exciting news with regard to YouTube is that we have unofficially hit 4,000 watch hours in the last year, the last 365 days. So I've got some stats here to show you. So in the last 360, so we've got some more numbers. We've got 1,700, and that's a typo. Actually, we have 1,749 subscribers. Although maybe by the time you're watching this recording, we've got another 10 subscribers. I don't know. We're at 1,749 subscribers at the moment. One more to get to 1,750. We hit the 80,000 views recently, and we unofficially hit 4,000 watch hours. And the reason that 4,000 watch hours is significant is that it now makes the channel eligible to receive money from ads. The membership side of things and the ability to do super thanks and stickers and stuff. You can even, I think, no one needs to do this, but you can you still not see anything? Are people not seeing? Okay, good. I'm not sure what happened then. But the membership side of things and the ability to, you can actually like give tips on videos, or even in the chat, you can pay money to get your message on the chat come up in different colors or something. I don't really know what it's all about. But no, you don't need to try that, although if somebody wants to, that'd be fun. That became eligible once I had 500 subscribers and 3,000 watch hours. But once you have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, then you can get a share of the ad revenue and YouTube Premium payments as well. So we're unofficially 4,000. The official, they kind of audit the numbers, and so there's a trailing number of hours that's about 5 days old. That is actually what they use for eligibility of the ad revenue, and that's currently at 3,996. But obviously, once we catch up in the next day or two, that will officially cross over 4,000. That aspect of it won't make a difference at all to you because you see the ads anyway, regardless of whether. The only difference is that the project will actually get a little bit of money, and it's not going to be a huge amount of money. Honestly, it's going to be like $1 or $2 a month, maybe, and that's not even going to cover like the hosting of Rimbë, which is currently about. Well, last month it was $60, but I've worked out a way of reducing that. So that's going to go towards supporting that kind of stuff. But if you do want to become a channel member as well, that's an option. We currently have we currently have one member that I'm very thankful for, but maybe that will increase over time. Okay. I promised to say a little bit about multiple copies of History of Middle-earth, which leads me to the penultimate section, which is book acquisitions. I haven't done one of these for a while. I think I've still been acquiring books, but just that I've either forgotten to or they haven't been notable enough to bring up on this channel. But I'm really excited. You'll see the background's a little different than perhaps in previous videos because I've done a bit of a reorg and got some extra bookcases. I now have a dedicated History of Middle-earth bookcase, which you can see part of here. And it has the HarperCollins print-on-demand versions. It has first editions of the Houghton Mifflin US editions. But what I've always really, really wanted is UK first editions. So not the print-on-demand ones up there, but the original ones that were released in the 80s and 90s. And you can probably already see, sitting on the table behind me, I now am in possession of a set of first edition, first impression copies of the History of Middle-earth. And they are, thanks to the wonderful Tom Ayling, who I'm sure many of you are aware of. He's been on the Tolkien Collector's Guide channel before. He's a subscriber to this channel as well. He's at a book festival in Bath at the moment, so he couldn't watch live. But I had told him that I'd always wanted a first edition, first impression set of the History of Middle-earth, and he was able to acquire one for me. The most I've ever spent on books, which is saying something given I have the Christopher Tolkien signed Silmarillion, which I also bought through Tom before he was independent. But anyway, thank you very much, Tom Ayling. I'll put a link to his wonderful site in the description as well. It's definitely worth checking out. He does wonderful videos on social media as well about antiquarian books and has a lot of Tolkien related stuff as well, so definitely check him out. Okay, you don't actually need to bring the wine, Hannah, because I've got plenty of let me swivel. I've got a bunch of wine over there. I've got another 75 bottles in a fridge just here. Yeah, I have wine too. Books and wine are the two things that I collect. Anyway, so that's my latest book acquisition. I can show you. Let me actually just grab it, just so you can see it. This is The Shaping of Middle-earth, which I bought in paperback when it first came out. So The Shaping of Middle-earth, Volume 4 of History of Middle-earth, was the volume that I bought when I was 13, maybe. And it really had a huge impact on me. Those of you who know my reading history know I read The Shaping of Middle-earth before I read Lord of the Rings. A little odd, but anyway. Okay. Oh yes, Wright was cheap. Wright would be maybe 5th or 6th in terms of cost. Yes. The Wright was unbelievably cheap for what it is. And I do have the video coming on the. We're talking about the English Dialect Dictionary, which is right behind me next to the wine. I am planning on still doing that video on the English Dialect Dictionary. Got a couple of other videos I think I'll probably do first. I've planned out pretty much the content for the rest of the year, and so I will be recording that soon. It's one of the reasons why I bought the new camera, is I wanted to do a nicer job on some of these videos, including the one on the English Dialect Dictionary. And thanks again, Tom, for pointing out that that auction that was selling the English Dialect Dictionary. That's one of my prides and joys, along with the new, or not new, old, first UK edition of History of Middle-earth. Okay, let me talk about some Rimbë remodeling. This is significant but not particularly impressive, I guess, would be one way of putting it. So for those of you who aren't aware, Rimbë is our platform for doing text annotations. So we've been doing a lot of work the last couple of months on paragraph level annotations of particularly characters and locations, as well as scene segmentation. So going through each paragraph in Book 2 of Lord of the Rings was the first thing that we've been tackling. Identifying what characters are present, where they're located. We'll also be doing what time it is and so on, and then breaking up into scenes. And there's a lot of really fun stuff we're going to be able to do with that over time. But Rimbë is the tool that I built for doing that annotation. But I made we're getting to the point where I needed to scale certain things out, because we're using it for more and more text, and we're going to be using it for more and more types of annotation. And when I originally I built it very, very quickly. Those of you who saw the first video when I announced it, I think what I was showing was only a couple of days old. The first version was done very, very rapidly, but it was very focused on just the scene level annotation of the Lord of the Rings. It was very specifically, here's a paragraph, identify who the people and locations are in this text. But as we extended the amount, and it was just done on one chapter, we did like the many meetings and the Ringo South we did first. But as it's expanded to more and more chapters of Lord of the Rings, and we're bringing in the Hobbit, and we're doing a bunch of other stuff as well, there started to be issues. And also we want to do more types of annotations. And so this is kind of a little bit of the internals and geeking out here with data models. But up until a couple of days ago, Rimbë had this object in the system called a text. And that could be a chapter, it could be an entire book. An entire book would probably be too long. So I had started doing each chapter in Lord of the Rings was a separate text. And incorporated in that were what the tasks you could do on that text. And it was just it was becoming too limiting. As you know, the Lord of the Rings has 61 chapters, so not even counting the appendices and prologues. So we would have had 61 different texts that you would have sort of had to navigate on a big list through to do work on just Lord of the Rings. You had another 19 chapters for The Hobbit, and then the Silmarillion, and all this other stuff. And if we were doing other texts as well, which we are, I'll say more about that in future videos. It was just going to become overwhelming. Furthermore, we started off just with locations and characters, but as we add more and more stuff we want to annotate, it would become overwhelming to sort of have to do all of the annotations at once for a text. So what I wanted to do was better manage multiple texts corresponding to a single work, and also allow multiple tasks to be done on a text. And so what I've actually been working on this week is this sort of split. I'll get rid of me so you can see it. This sort of split where texts are grouped under works now, first of all, and then texts can have more than one task associated with them. So in other words, I can take each individual chapter of Lord of the Rings, I can still treat that as a text, but I can group it under a Lord of the Rings work, which means rather than being and in fact, I'm not doing Lord of the Rings work, I'm doing Fellowship of the Ring as a work. So in other words, rather than this sort of long list of hundreds of texts, they're now organized into works. So when you go into Rimbë, if you're one of our annotators, and if anyone is interested in helping with annotation, let me know. You now see, Fellowship of the Ring rather than a long list of chapters, and you can navigate into that, and then you get 22 texts within that rather than potentially hundreds or whatever. And then similarly with the task stuff, it means that I can more cleanly separate if we just want to allow people to go through and annotate characters and locations without worrying about scene segmentation or some other issues. We can do that much more easily. I think it's going to be, it's just going to make things easier to manage as we add more texts and more kinds of annotation. So I'm excited about that. I don't have anything to actually show in Rimbë yet, but I wanted to give you some behind the scenes insight into the sort of the data modeling here. As to the question of would I ever analyze Bilbo's last song? Absolutely. And in fact, I will say I haven't got any definite plans yet, but when the collected poems volumes come out in September, I'll be returning to something that Hannah and I have talked about for a long time. I'd started years ago. I had this vision for basically a database of the information about each of the poems in Tolkien, so you could see how many used a particular rhyming scheme, how many used a particular metrical scheme, and so on. So that was one of the things I've talked about before, the Digital Tolkien Project doing a catalogue of verse. With the new volumes coming out in September, that sort of changes things a little bit, in a good way, I think, because we have a much sort of more definitive catalogue of them that we can draw on. So I still plan for the Digital Tolkien Project to do that analysis and make that database, but we'll be able to tie it more closely with the published books. So September 17th is, I believe, the release date, and so stay tuned for that. On that point, I just quickly want to think of it. Sarah Brown, Dr. Sarah Brown, wonderful Tolkien scholar, is going to be teaching a series of classes at Signum Space, the adult continuing education program at Signum, on the poems, starting, I believe, in November, based on the Hammond and Skull collected poems volumes. And I'm going to be a once a month guest speaker in that class to talk about some of the more formal aspects of the poem and do some sort of interesting analysis of the poems. So check that out. Again, I'll send it. I'll put a link in the description, as they all say, and you can find out more about Sarah's class and the guest lectures that I'll be doing that will draw on whatever work the Digital Tolkien Project does on the poems, including Bilbo's last song. That will definitely be one of the things that we include. Although we're going to be starting right from the beginning, so the focus, obviously a huge, well, not obviously, knowing the volume, the way they're splitting it up into the 3 volumes, there is a huge amount of poetry dating from the 1910s. The first volume's focused on that first decade. And because a large number, I guess a third of the poems date from then, and that's what we're starting with. So this will be good stuff. Okay, that's pretty much all I've got. I do want to kind of give a little bit of a teaser. I'm not going to say a ton about this, but some of you who watch the channel know that I did a video about linked open data and what linked open data is, with some Tolkien relevant examples. That's going to become more and more significant in the coming months. So I did want to sort of hint at at some linked open data stuff that we're doing. It's going to be a big part of what the Digital Tolkien Project is doing moving forward. I just want to drop that hint. It's so true, Tom, that young men in love can generate a lot of poetry, and Tolkien certainly did. Okay, so just bear that in mind. I'm not going to say any more at this stage. Linked open data is definitely going to be a buzzword, shall I say, in the coming months with regard to the Digital Tolkien Project. And you can kind of get a sense if you go watch that video about what is linked open data, what we might be doing. But I'll leave it at that. Okay, that is all I have for today. Unless people have particular questions, I'll just hang out for a minute or so just in case people have questions in the chat. Just a reminder, if you want to get involved in the Digital Tolkien Project, the easiest way to do that is to first of all join the Discord. Link is always in the description of how to join the Discord, and there's a lot of things going on there that you can get involved in, regardless of your interests and expertise and so on. It's a lot of fun stuff to do. But if there are no more questions, thank you very much, everyone, for joining live, and thank you to everyone for watching the recording as well. So I will see you in the next live stream, although I hopefully will release 1 or 2 videos between then. It's going to be an exciting next few months. I'll be at Oxenmoot, by the way, in just over a month. And potentially some other Tolkien-related travel as well. So thanks, everyone, and I'll see you in the next live stream or in Discord or wherever. And I guess we're half an hour away from the panel at SDCC starting. For those of you who are interested in getting some Rings of Power news, that will come up in the next. I'm sure social media will be filled with it in the next couple of hours. So thanks, everyone, and I'll see you next time.